which that is what can happen in a dry year is you get that seed quote gets a little bit more brittle, and then that can be a weak point where you can see mechanical damage later on or some lower vigor seeds just because it was stressed out at that harvest time. So I think my D&D character is going to be the bean pod wizard.
Welcome back to the Cornelius Seed Podcast. I'm Juan, Cornelius Seed Innovation Lead, and today I'm joined by Will Cornelius, Soybean Lead and one of the owners. Today we're touching on what could be an industry watch-out for the 2025 planting season. This is as it relates to soybean quality and specifically germ. So let's dive in. Will, just last week at our Spring Agronomy Partner to Profit meetings, something that came up was soybean quality. Now, we all know that soybeans can be a bit fickle from year to year. Those dry conditions have raised some good questions, and most importantly, is there any cause of concern? As you know, harvest was a bit dry, and we capped what was already a tough year.
You know what? You're right, Juan. It was a bit of a tough year. If we kind of rewind to last fall, pro-con, we had a very dry, warm fall. Unfortunately, that led to some very dry beans. So we got moistures down in the 9s, 8s, even down to 7s. Not just commercially, but also for parent seed. So unintended consequences of dry beans is they become a little more brittle. Thankfully this fall versus a couple falls ago when they got dry, they didn't get rained on. We were able to get them harvested timely because when you get rained on after you get dry beans, they do pick up moisture, but that's not a good thing for seed quality because that means that pericarp or that seed coat will expand back out and it can cause a rip, a tear, a weak point, something that can cause an entry point for disease or just a weak point in the seed coat that could be a place for damage. And we did see a little bit of that here the last few years. Thankfully, our seed conditioning qualities, state of the art, top notch. We really take our time to do it. We're not trying to get volume through. We're just trying to do the best job, even if it takes a little longer. So we really haven't seen too many issues in our, high quality soybean seed at Cornelius. But with that said, we did end up with one variety here just recently that did end up, the original germ was very good. And then when we ran it through the conditioning process, it did pick up some mechanical damage and unfortunately did not make the 93% germ. So we got to lower that down to 85%.
You said something that's key there that I know separates us from other folks, which was, you said 93% germ. And that is when I came on the team here at Cornelius Seed, I remember being surprised by seeing them labeled that way because everything in history for me has always been 90% germ. Is that a Cornelius specific thing? Can you tell me a little bit more about that before we move on?
Yeah, no, great point. Whether it's corn or soybeans, any crop we're selling here at Cornelius, quality is where we see our competitive advantage. We're going to bring you high yielding products, but at the end of the day, if they don't come out of the ground at a high rate, that's a problem. So we really strive to set ourselves apart through quality. And what we found by taking that extra step on soybeans is we're able to get significantly higher germs than the industry standard. Most companies label a straight 90%. That's acceptable. But we're finding most of our beans are germing 95% or above. And oftentimes they're germing at 99 or 100%, which is exceptional. So we decided 7 or 8 years ago is why not tell the farmers that, if they can save a little bit of money by using a little less seed, because our germination's higher, we're going to have more live plants come out of the ground. We definitely want to pass that to the customer. And I do think it is a competitive advantage for us. There maybe are a couple other seed companies doing that, but I think we're kind of in a class of our own in our footprint for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and I know we're talking about soybeans here. Same with custom bulk boxes. We're kind of one of the first ones to catch that upstream to make sure that seed reps are not out there dumping bags or weighing out boxes. It's a nice little niche there. So back to the beans, the low moisture. What is that perfect germ that you like to make sure your growers are harvesting your parent beans when you're working on that?
So the moisture that we're targeting at harvest time is somewhere in that 12 to 14 range. Ideally, you catch it the first time you go down. As I mentioned before, if you get beans dried down and they get too dry, you can get them wet and get them back into that 12 to 14 range, but you're sacrificing some quality to do that. So we try and harvest our seed beans the first time they get to 12 to 14%, not, it dried down, it rained, and then it dried down and rained. We want to nail it the first time so we don't have that stress on the seed. So, and usually we're able to do that, but you get a warm a hot harvest like we had last year, it gets hard to do. So we want to get them out as quick as we can once they get dried down.
Inadvertently here, you got QA data back from the labs, and you saw something that you didn't like. And just to be clear, Will, he's one of the owners of Cornelius Seed, but he's also our soybean selection lead. So anything soybeans goes across his desk. So whether you're happy or mad, his phone number is on our website. So feel free to reach out to him accordingly. He loves to respond. But at any rate, so you discovered this. We're talking through about you said 2218E. What's going through your head as you're going through this? Are you saying, you know what, do I just get rid of this line, send these to town before they're treated? Walk us through that thought process and how we're taking care of folks.
Well, yeah, let's take a step back even. So, I mean, it along with the high quality seed is knowing where you're starting. So we knew we had a dry fall. We knew moistures were going to be low. So we always take a post-harvest sample or field sample, bin sample, whatever you want to call it, send that in. So we knew we have a starting point. And at the harvest sample, everything was German 93% or above. We did notice some higher than abnormal seedlings recorded. So we were seeing live seeds of 99 to 100 in almost everything, but we'd have 4 or 5 abnormals pop up here or there, which that is what can happen in a dry year. As you get that seed quote gets a little bit more brittle, and then that can be a weak point where you can see mechanical damage later on, or some lower vigor seeds just because it was stressed out at that harvest time. So by starting with that field sample in the fall, we kind of have an idea of what quality issues we may have to deal with. And then the next step we do after that, if we do see any red flags, we take those specific lots and we'll run a test amount. So we'll run 400 to 600 to 800 bushel of them, see how they convert, see if there's anything we can do different, better, and see what kind of results we get. So that's where we like to start.
Two things I want to touch on here, just because, just to make sure everybody listening is following. In other words, I'm not. Abnormal seed. Just explain it to me like I'm 5. What do you mean by that? So normally when we see product label, we see germ and where it originates. What do you mean by abnormal germ or abnormal seed?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And abnormal is kind of a catch-all term, to be honest. There's a lot of things that fall under in an abnormal category. Specifically in this instance, we're mostly dealing with reduced vigor or short damage hypocotyl, which, if you remember your physiology of a soybean, the hypocotyl is the part that elongates and pulls the cotyledons through the soil to get them to emerge and then straighten out to become your stalk. So it's that first part that's really important. So if you have a damaged hypocotyl, that can reduce the efficacy of your seedling getting through the soil and emerging and getting your cotyledons established. So ideally, you want a nice, healthy hypocotyl. So if it gets damaged, if you get a crusting event or it's wet, you get more disease pressure, you can start to reduce your emergence. Now, in perfect conditions, I think a majority of these abnormals are still going to emerge, but you do increase your risk of having a reduced germ, which is why we don't count an abnormal towards the actual labeled germ. Even though these 2218s germ at 99 to 100% live seed, we're calling them 85 because we know that some of these aren't going to make it through the soil.
So one of the things that, as you go through and you're explaining that, right? So, we've established that typically, our soybeans go out the door labeled at 93% germ, which is, fascinating. With this particular number, you're going to have to scale that back to 85%. And, what are you doing to communicate that to the seed dealers and our customers? How do we get across that?
Well, at Cornelius, we certainly want to treat our customers as we treat ourselves. They're family. They're more than just customers. We want them to really be part of the family here. And part of that comes with communication. We don't want any surprises. We want to communicate, hey, 2218s are one of the best early enlist lines we have, but just so you know, Mr. Farmer, our germinations are showing a little bit lower than what we would normally expect. So first we want to communicate that and then say, okay, here's what you can do about it. What we've decided to do on this specific example is, okay, let's offset that 8% reduction in germ, so 93 down to 85, with 8% more seed. So what we've decided to do is provide to the customer at no cost 8% more seed, recommend they increase their population by give or take 8% to help offset any of those seedlings that don't come out of the ground. The other thing we recommend is just try and put them in the best conditions. So if you've got a package of beans, maybe don't plant the 2218s first, or wait for the best conditions you can to make sure we maximize emergence. So those are the things. It's communication. It's saying, or Mr. Farmer, if you know what, you're not comfortable with that, we've got other great options. We've got a 1.6, we've got a 1.9, we've got a 2.2, 2.0. We can go to a different option that's going to have that 93% germ that we were expecting.
What would you recommend to a grower as they're coming to this decision point?
I mean, it kind of like I mentioned before, I think 2218s are one of the best early enlist lines we have. If you're in that northern tier of Iowa, southern Minnesota, across to Wisconsin, it's a must-plant bean. It's been one of our high-volume beans for a number of years, and that's because it performs. It goes across a number of acres. It handles it. It brings the yield. You can even handle some of those higher IDC acres and bring good yield, even though it's not considered an IDC bean. It just has the yield power to get through that. So with that said, I think if you've had good luck with 2218s, you still need to be planting them. So I would recommend to most guys to, continue to plant them. Now, with that said, if you've got a tougher soil, whether it's wet or your conditions, or, I just want to get out there as early as possible and plant, I would probably recommend moving to another bean that we know the vigor and germ is going to be as high as it possibly could be. Because if you stress this environment that you plant these beans into, you're probably going to see that fully reduced germ. Now, the offset of population can overcome that too. So you're probably okay even if you want to do that, as long as you increase your population by 8%. So you've got some options. At the end of the day, it's a conversation between the seed dealer or the DSM and the customer and what's right for them.
So increasing population is definitely a way to address this. Does treatment address this in any capacity in any way? Do you test that through?
And sometimes treatment can make a difference, especially if you are dealing with those wetter conditions where maybe the issue is that weakened hypocotyl gets infected by disease. If you have a treatment, that's likely not going to happen. So is it going to make the situation go away? No, but it can certainly improve it. So I think those with treated beans, if you get in that conditions, where the treatment's going to help you out, it's going to make a difference.
I love that we are being open and transparent about this, just because as I go through and, I stay on top of news and just follow what's going on in the industry, this isn't new, right? This is something that happens, I'd say rather often. If you have a dry harvest, without a doubt, you're going to see it the following year. What are some questions that folks should be asking their seed reps or the people that get seed from? How evaluate this, right? I mean, you shouldn't be blindsided by something like this if it just means upping your population. I love the fact that you're saying, hey, up your population, don't worry about it. You're not going to get sent an invoice for that or whatever. We're making this right because this is how we label things, right? I mean, if you label things at 90%, you'd be sending less seed out the door, but you don't. You labeled it at 93 because you trust your product. But in short is, is there any recommendations you can give to growers that may want to evaluate this?
I think it's totally fair to ask your seed company, what quality seed am I actually getting? And if they can't be transparent with you and tell you, or they say, well, I don't know, we'll see what shows up. That's not good. I think that's not a very trusted partner, in my opinion. And that's where we set ourselves apart, is we want to be that trusted, transparent partner and say, yeah, we do have a bean that may be less than that, but we've got 3 or 4 on each side of it that still have 93%. And if anything else changes, we're going to let you know. And to me, that's what a trusted seed advisor, seed partner is being transparent, adding communication to help you make the best decision for your farm. Because at the end of the day, we want you to be profitable. Otherwise you won't be in business, and we want customers to have a great experience so they keep coming back year after year.
Absolutely. No, I think you highlight perfectly the value of working with not just a company like us, but an independent seed company that can make these types of decisions, almost on the fly. Now, a lot of this is easy for us because you're the one making them, and here I am talking to you about it. Anything else that you think that we need to address as it relates to what really, in my opinion, is going to be an industry-wide challenge, and necessarily for the industry, right? There's a lot of folks that harvested beans well below 12-13%.
From a seed perspective, yeah, it was an industry-wide deal. There's probably going to be companies that deliver 80 to 85% beans, and you may not know about till they show up on your farm. Now, with that said, I think it's important to we spent a lot of time talking about this specific 2218 deal. The reality is at Cornelius, we're like 90% of the way through conditioning. And so far, knock on wood, this is the only bean we've had that had a germ come back less than we expected. Everything else so far has been labeled 93. We're well on our way through shipping. We're still working through the final varieties. But so far, overall 93 is still the standard for all of our beans, and again, if we have something else come back that's lower, we're going to make it right with the customer.
Well, one of the things I like to do is we're wrapping up these podcasts with the folks that we have on is to leave us with a couple takeaways. What is something that you would tell a young Will Cornelius getting out of college at Iowa State University, being an AGR out there and he's getting ready to start life farming, because we're definitely in a different era now than we were, back when we graduated college. So what's that one piece of advice that you give a young Will?
Boy, that's a complicated question. I don't know. I mean, I think things have gone pretty well. There's always room for improvement. I mean, I'd probably say, continue to network, to leverage relationships, to meet people across the industry, and try and think outside the box. Let's not say, well, that's been working for us. We don't probably need to change anything. Let's challenge and see, is there anything we could do better? Let's look at partners. Obviously, we've added things like Streamline. We've added things like Pivot Bio. Are there things that can bring value to a customer through seed or in addition to seed? And maybe we could jump on some of those things even earlier. If I was to go back 15 years in the past and see, it's amazing. And, if I think about the next 15 years, hopefully we'll continue that same message and continue to see what brings value to customers, what helps them planet profit. And, it's kind of exciting.
No, I'm glad I asked you that, just because, another thing that we didn't talk about, but that I know you do, is you oversee a lot of the crews for the tasseling process, and something about being independent is that we also grow our own. We produce our own seed, which is a huge value, so we can control quality a lot along the way. And there's been times when I rode with you and I hear you talking to the tasselers and just giving tidbits of advice. So getting another one there for them. Any final thoughts as it relates to this? I mean, we've established that essentially the short of it is dry harvest last year has the potential for questionable quality on some things. And it's just important to make sure you're on top of it and that you're aware. And if you find a situation where you are experiencing this abnormal germ or lower germ, is how are you going to be taken care of? You've covered that, we're offering customers crate replacements on either side of the maturity range, or being the 8% germ to meet our labeled 93. Anything else that we want to hit?
Yeah, and upping that population at no cost to the customer. That's the important thing. That's where we think, we hang our hat on quality. And if we're going to tell you we have a lower quality germ product, it's still high quality, but lower germ product, we're going to help you get there at no cost to you, because that's what a trusted advisor, trusted partner does. But again, the majority of the lineup, we're looking at same high quality seed, the majority of them are well above 93%. That's where we labeled, but the vast majority of our seed is significantly better than that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. That is all I had. I know that we want to get out here and get this message out. Folks, check us out. Follow us on socials. Just look up Cornelius Seed or at Planet Profit, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, you name it. So thanks for tuning in, and until the next one.
All right. Thanks, Juan.